Hi everyone. Hi. I'm back here today talking about my upcoming project Creativity Island, and I've got one of our lead artists zooming in from our studio today, which is so bright and colourful. I've moved spaces. There's a few sort of Pokemon toys, cup of tea in the background, but I just wanted to be somewhere a bit light today, so hopefully that works okay and there's not too much shadow. So I asked Josie Brookes if she would work with me on the project when I was at kind of the research stage and I was just researching the project idea and thinking about it. Josie and I have worked together before with children and young people at a project at Action for Children that I delivered last year. So we've already worked really closely together. I love Josie's practice. I love all she does. You should definitely follow her on Instagram because there's so much creativity and colour to have a look at there. So I'll get Josie to introduce herself and tell us a little bit more about her creative practice and her motherhood journey, how old her children are and whereabouts in the world she is. Hi, Josie.
Hi Claire. So as Claire says, I'm Josie Brookes and I'm an illustrator and creative facilitator, and I live in Newcastle upon Tyne, which is where I'm from. And let's think. So I do illustration, but I kind of do a lot more of a broader sort of sense of creative things. So it can sometimes be animation, collage, print-based stuff. And commissions that come my way, but I also do quite a lot of project work. So that's either with community groups, like working with Claire for Action for Children, or I work with older people, teenagers, and actually work with, down to babies. So a real wide spectrum of people. I'm a mum to two boys, one's 8 and one's 5. And so I've kind of been on this motherhood journey for a little while now, because actually my oldest is going to be 9 in next year.
Oh, wow. It's so weird, isn't it? Once they get past 5, you're like, I haven't got a little one anymore. I've got this little boy. So my little one's 6. And obviously I've got a baby on the way in the next month. And thinking about that kind of first 5 years of motherhood and how you manage that in comparison to when they start sort of being in school and kind of managing their own interests and going off and taking themselves off for either play or their own things that they do. It's so different, isn't it, in that first 5 years?
Yeah, and I think it's something you have to get used to, actually, because I've almost had to let some things go that I wasn't expecting to feel kind of hard, but with my oldest, how he's kind of now becoming that little bit more independent and wanting that independence, and I'm sort of still going, let's hold hands and walk to school, and which he still does, luckily, which I'm really pleased about. And yeah, like my youngest who started school in September, and that was a real kind of shock to the system for me, because actually since for 8 years I've kind of had a child with me, and kind of having that within my week and having time together. So yeah, that's been a bit of a change for me.
Yeah, it's a real shift, isn't it? Just in terms of what you can get your head into through the working day and how you manage that time through the working day differently. It's just very, very different, isn't it? Once they're kind of set up at school, and it feels really different.
Yeah, it does. And I think, for a long time I was juggling that feeling within the week, within the timetable of the week, because I was working part-time, and then looking after my kids part-time, in the days when they weren't at school. So you kind of, for me, it was a question of kind of switching off from work and just being like in the moment on the days that I had them, because I especially towards the latter part of that, I kind of realized how precious that was, because my first one was already in the school system, and I knew what was coming and that I was going to miss that time with them. So yeah, I kind of tried to make the most of it and do lots of fun things together.
Yeah, and obviously pre-pandemic, we had all the options in the world of the things that we could do, and it's quite a nice experimental time to try new things, isn't it? I think I often talked about it in one of my projects that I ran as this kind of baby as a sort of almost kind of shield. So I'm quite introverted naturally, but I always felt a bit more confident when I went into new environments with a baby that was sort of set up for me being there with a baby somehow. And I'm like, well, I can go because he'll like it, and then I might like it, but I can put myself out my comfort zone a bit with that.
Totally. Do you know one example of that really strikes me is that it was the bringing in baby at the cinema, thing of like not I wouldn't go to the cinema by myself normally,
Ah,
but I could go with my baby, and we could like in it. It felt like a really nice thing to do, but it was something that I wouldn't have done otherwise.
yeah.
So it is that thing where it kind of almost having your baby gives you the confidence to try something a bit different.
Definitely. And also the bringing in baby films, like they weren't for kids, were they? That was like you could watch a film that like took you on an emotional roller coaster as an
Oh yeah,
adult and just kind of keep your baby content next to you. It's like
yeah.
it's a really incredible concept. I think it's worked really well.
I remember watching Born Identity, and my little one was kind of reaching that age where maybe it was like the kind of last month or so that I could probably get away with him being
Yeah.
in bringing a baby, and I just sort of had that moment where I was like, I don't know if this feels appropriate for him to be like looking at the screen at this.
Yeah, yeah. That's the thing, isn't it? And were there other environments, Josie, that were kind of set up? Because obviously, because I used to live in Newcastle as well, and I
Mhm.
used to adore going to Seven Stories and kind of
Yeah.
wandering around the level 2 space at Baltic and stuff. Those environments that felt just really welcoming to me as an adult creative, but also felt like they'd been really well curated by other adults for children. Have you got any examples of things like that that you did with your little ones?
Mm. Well, I think, I did really enjoy the museums, and
Mm.
I loved the Discovery Museum, and the kids loved that particularly because there was the water room where they could get all messy, and also they could kind of do things as a little soft play and stuff. So I really utilized all the Tyne and Weir Museum
Yes.
options, and the
Yeah.
Hancock with the big dinosaur, and the Baltic again, yeah, and the libraries. Just trying to think where else we used to
Libraries
go.
really nice spaces, aren't they? It's like it's nice when they first start handing you picture books, when they kind of go,
Yeah.
I want to look at these pictures with you, or read this, but they're not even talking yet. They just kind of recognize that this is something that animates you as a mom, and you can kind of read with them and look at pictures.
Oh,
That's a lovely thing.
absolutely. Yeah, and we're a family of picture book lovers. We
Lovely.
like have a lot.
Yeah,
We
and
have a lot of books.
you've written some as well, illustrated and written some as well.
Yes, I have. Yeah, yeah. So it's so nice because I can read them with the boys. So I have read my books with the boys, which is a really sort
Yay.
of special thing, and they like them, which is nice.
Yeah, that is
But yeah,
nice.
yeah. I mean, I think storybook time, even from when my eldest was a baby, has always been a really important, special time for us. That we've kind of bonded over loving our books and pictures, and
Yeah.
obviously I love all the illustrations, so I'm always dead passionate about showing them new ones.
Yeah, yeah. And the stories, I was chatting to a musician friend the other day about another project, and I was talking about that way in through audio when children are young, and those kind of the soundscapes and different things. So we've got this thing called a Tony box. I don't know whether you've heard of them, but
No, no.
it's a cube and it's a box, and you put little characters on top and they tell stories. So there's lots of the kind of really
Mm.
famous children's picture books like Zog and Julia Donaldson, Gruffalo, all those sorts of ones. But then there's classic tales as well. So he likes to fall asleep to Peter Pan. But then you can also get people to record a story onto it, and you put the character on. So my mum's recorded one for my little
Oh,
boy, and then he gets to listen to her read him a story at bedtime, which is lovely. So after we've done picture books, we then put this box on, and so there's this kind of audio world, which is really interesting to watch someone growing up with that, because we had sort of audio stories as kids, and then it's sort of separate from the screens and separate from that, and it's kind of on in the background, and they're kind of captivated and all that. So yeah, that's
yeah.
been an interesting one to experiment with. But yeah, it has it on every single night to fall asleep to.
And
So
isn't that nice that, especially in lockdown, how maybe he can't get to see his grandma, he's
yeah.
got her kind of in the room with him at bedtime.
Yeah,
That's lovely, isn't
really,
it?
really lovely. Yeah. So she'd said something at the end like, "Wasn't that a lovely story?" And he just went, "Yes, Grammy." He calls her Grammy. "Yes, Grammy." I was just like, "Oh, that's so sweet."
That is
Yeah.
lovely.
So all these new ways of kind of interpreting stories and technology and stuff, I'm just really interested in that and interested in what's possible. I think
Mhm.
that we've had a few chats. I don't know whether you've tried to do any sort of Zoom classes with your kids or anything like that. Anything that's been on, like especially with the older one, been on during
Mm.
lockdown, or
Well,
engaged in any activity or anything online.
Well, my oldest one's got a real aversion to Zoom and online. So his
Okay.
school, actually, the class were having weekly Zoom sessions, but after one or two he just decided that it wasn't for him. And I think there was a disconnect there, that he wanted it to be real life and sort of being with them, so he kind of switches off from that. But having said that, we've watched some really nice puppet theatre. What's the name? Is it Little People Theatre? It's not Northeast based, but they did I Want My Hat Back. I don't know if you've it's so good. Yes. And it's brilliant. I would really like recommend people putting it on, because both of mine were absolutely captivated by it. So there's been a few nice examples where the Zoom option has not been the same as being in a theatre or being together, but it's done a good job of like replacing it somehow.
It's just interesting, isn't it? Because we wouldn't have done any of that if we hadn't have been in a pandemic. And obviously you and I are talking about how we bring your skill set and your creative practice to our creative community at the moment, and we're still sort of in the research phases of working all that through. And obviously for mums with newborns, especially up to sort of non-crawling phase, there is that lovely little cocoon bit where you can watch something online, feel like you've sort of developed something in yourself. Maybe when the baby's asleep you get time to do a little bit of something, not always. Like my first one cried a lot, so I don't know, we'll see what happens with this one. But then there's that other stage where children want to get involved, and there's that kind of messy play element, which we've chatted about a little bit in terms of your collage work, haven't we?
So definitely. And I think in some ways it depends how you've, if you might, before you become a mother, you might not have done anything creative like that for a long time, and in some ways what I found a lot of my friends have experienced is that they've really enjoyed being able to connect with that side of creativity again. And it's almost like what we were talking about before, of that having an excuse to sit down and do it, and doing it with your child it's for them, but actually it's for you as well, and you get so much out of it together. And it's an experience that you can go through together, and in some ways you don't have to have that pressure of producing anything like magnificent, or it's all about the process, because that's what they're getting out of it.
Definitely. And I know when you were doing the workshop for teenagers last year, and I think we just started with sort of shapes, and I think somebody had sort of, maybe you suggested doing a heart shape, and it was a collage. It was all junk mail or kind of from magazines, and I ended up just kind of creating a heart out of lots of different textures. I've never ever done that before, but because it just felt like, oh, this is really fun and it's really achievable. It was like a small heart shape, and I was just kind of collaging different bits in. It felt really nice. And then I had tried to do that with my little boy a little bit, and it was just trying to explain that all of it is okay, and there's that definite time before school where that freedom of expression just explodes, and we have to then look and go, it's not about being in the lines, it's fine, it's all fine, it can go anywhere. And then they start doing a little bit more of that to us, and then we're reminding them, no, it's creative play, it can be anywhere and go anywhere. So keeping some of that alive, I think is a really interesting thing to play with as a mother, and like what you bring to it and stuff. And we all have preconceived ideas about our creativity that sometimes have started in school, if we're not particularly artistic, if we can't necessarily draw the still life fruit bowl as well as our neighbour next to us, then we might have built up that idea that, oh, creativity means artistic and I can't quite do it. And actually your approach, especially with the collage stuff, just smashes all that, and you're like, no, we're all creative, we find our own way with it.
And I really do believe that. I believe everybody's creative, and it's actually that they haven't tapped into it for a while, or they haven't thought about it. And actually as soon as you start doing something, you find your creativity and you find your level, and like you say, it doesn't have to be neat or how within the lines. You can it can be whatever you want it to be, and actually if it makes you feel good and you're getting something out of it, then I think that's that's a success. That's what, like when I'm doing workshops, that's what I'm aiming for people to come away thinking and feeling.
Yeah, and what a good feeling it is. That's the thing, isn't it? I think the opposite is that I have a lot of, especially with my coaching clients, you know, they'll say, well, I haven't really got time for creativity as well on my to-do list. And I'm like, well, if we bring it in holistically, and if it's part of your well-being and part of your self-care, and you can see how good it makes you feel to do a thing. So obviously during lockdown, there was a lot of kind of new people bubbling up and going, well, we'll do a stitch kit, or we'll do some illustration, or we'll start macrame. There was a lot of that going on because we were like looking to change up our environments in the home, but also like feel that sense of achievement and a bit of control in the kind of madness of the unknown. So it was really interesting to watch all of that play out and kind of go, oh, people have had that nudge to just have a bit of a go. And also then those companies that sell those sorts of kits were doing really well with it as well. And I know you did a little workshop, didn't you, and sent out materials to people in the pandemic.
Yes, I did. I organised an online collage workshop, and it was really well received, and it was actually, I think everybody really enjoyed it. It was that feeling, I got feedback that people had sort of been looking forward to it. It was like there's something in their diary that they had, and it was time for themselves, because the emphasis on it was really not about kind of creating this end product, but it was about like how we use collage as a way of just sort of self-expression and having fun and being creative. So yeah, it was really nice, and I really enjoyed it too. So it was a really good opportunity for me to do that in lockdown, because actually, a lot of my energy was going on homeschooling at the time.
Yeah, and that's hard, isn't it? That balance of like when you find time for your own creativity. I know for me, like we did a house extension 3 years ago, and we've kind of like redecorated the whole house, and that was like a lot of my creative output for a while, and it sort of worked with being like with running after the little one and doing that whole thing, because it felt like a Pinterest board on my phone is really easy to do, and thinking those things through in terms of color palettes and how I wanted our home to feel. So that felt like a huge creative achievement, but people might not recognize that creativity can literally be that, like, or, hanging a new print on your wall and kind of making those kind of creative decisions for your environment as well.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be this, it doesn't have to be this art project or some big kit that you've kind of got. You can find it in smaller ways, and actually when you are a new mother, I think looking at it that way and sort of taking the pressure of it being something big is a really helpful way of looking at it, because you can just introduce smaller bits of creativity into your day or your week that feel more manageable, and yeah, I think that's a really nice way to sort of think of it, Claire. Yeah.
And so if you were to sort of take over the kitchen table or wherever you can kind of spread out with the boys and stuff, how much interest have they had over the years in like what you want to set up for them in terms of creative activity? Because I've had like little to none from my little boy. He just wants to do role play stuff. Now he's getting a little bit more interested in painting and drawing, but it all just bombed. Everything, I was like, oh, I'll set this up. I love it. It would take me longer to set up, and then 2 seconds later he'd be bored and wandering off. So yeah, I'm really interested how that worked for you, and if you did much of it or just went out the house to do bits.
Sorry, my alarm's just going off.
Oh, that's all right.
Do you know, it's really funny because I always say this, like my boy, like I say, everybody's creative, and my boys are really creative, but they aren't hugely into like painting and drawing, and they have never been. So when I became a mother, I was like, oh my goodness, we can do painting all the time, and I'll just like, this will be just so incredibly amazing. And I, I set everything up, and I got all the plates for hand painting and stuff. And my eldest just was not having it. Like, he wasn't really into it. Like, he did really enjoy it. We definitely have an enjoyment, and I still do art projects with them because I still believe that they enjoy it. But I think I found that they just it wasn't their thing. There was something else that was their thing. So like both of them are really into baking. So baking's a big thing in my house.
Nice.
They both love to like cook and bake, and like I say, they love reading. And then we do animation because that's another side of my practice and my husband's practice. So they like doing stop frame animation with us, which is like involves drawing and things. But I think they just, they found their things that they're into. So I
Yeah,
kind of
it's
just
like, it's like
run
aspiring
with
to have
that.
that end point, isn't it, with animation, that they can see all the work's going to then be this really cool, quirky film, or however you guys end up doing it.
Yeah, but I feel like I've made kind of an effort to not push art or illustration with them, because I don't want them to feel like it's me enforcing it.
Mhm.
I feel like I want it to come from them.
Yeah,
Um, and their desires, and
yeah.
and it's that thing, isn't it? Everybody's different, and they have really, it's really clear even from when they're babies that they've got their personalities and what they like.
Definitely, yeah, definitely.
And
And it's weird because it feels like all the mums who I work with who are creative for work say really similar things to you, and you think in your head you're like, oh, they'll all be sort of Pinterest mums, as in like they'll set this, oh, it'll be beautifully curated and the kids will love it and stuff like that. And actually, it feels like, I don't know, it just feels like it's separate somehow. And so the most
yeah,
luck I've had is when I was doing a lot of bookmaking last year and trying to kind of teach myself all of that sort of stuff and doing a project around it. I would set myself up, and then he would be interested to come over, and I would have to
yeah,
stop, and then I would have to do one with him, and we would make a full
hmm,
book, and then he would have his ideas about what was going to go in the book. So it was interesting that way around, like me just doing me, and then him finding that that was interesting and he wanted to ask me about it. So yeah, I'm still really
yeah,
interested in that as a process of just kind of going, it's not like, ta-da, I've set up, like you say, the paper plates and the paint for the handprints. It's like something
yeah.
else where we're enjoying it and maybe we're kind of putting our fingers in it as well. I found
I
that
think
a
you're
lot adapting
completely
to
right.
children as well.
Yeah, and I think you're right. That that idea of you doing something for you, and you starting something, and almost like it's that thing of like, if you don't look at them, they'll just edge over and like be really interested, and you're like, oh, do you want to try? And
Yeah,
and and and, it, and sometimes that approach seems to work a lot better than, come on, let's do
yeah,
this. And but I think everybody's different. And that, my experience is what I've had with my boys, and
yeah.
other people have a very different experience of those things. But
Yeah,
yeah,
definitely. It's so interesting. And hopefully we'll get to find out a bit more in the online community from different people and how it's all gone for
yeah,
them. I did just want to ask about your own creativity as well. So I've bought like your products and stuff before, which I love. And I just wonder if you like where you get your inspiration from. So we bought in lockdown, we bought the bear hug print, and we bought
yeah.
it for my son, but also for his best friend who lives 2 doors down, so that
Oh,
it was sort of one of those we could put them in the window
a little hug.
wave. Yeah, and it just really spoke to me. I don't know whether you created it this year or whether it was old or what, but I just
Uh,
wondered about where you get your inspiration and how you decide, right, this week I'm going to make something and it's going to go on sale.
yeah. Well, most of the time, when it's something like that where it's a print, it's normally just come from me having that little bit of time to sort of say, I'm going to draw something that I feel like drawing today, rather than something that is a commission and has a purpose for somebody else.
Yes.
And they're normally the things that turn into the prints and the cards on my shop, because they're
Yeah.
kind of just something that I've done for fun. And I
Uh-huh.
love doing little characters, and I love animals, and yeah, it kind of just makes me feel happy. So I have a little sort of very home kind of makeshift printing setup in my studio here. So I kind of use that to do those. And I made that last year as part of a kind of a little series that I decided I wanted to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I have been doing some stuff in this year in lockdown, but being quite honest with you, my creativity has been less so during lockdown than usual, because just the sheer energy of kind of being a mum and
Yeah.
homeschooling
Yeah.
and doing what I need to do for my kids has been the
Yeah.
priority. And then the creativity, as like you kind of find when you become a mother, I think there's a balance, but sometimes you feel like the priority is making sure that they're okay and getting the things, getting what they need, and then
Mm,
you start looking at yourself, and trying
definitely.
to put that in there.
And also balancing being self-employed, and that whole bit of the picture, that work didn't stop just because we had to homeschool. So it's been a really different year for
Yeah,
us, I think, than it ordinarily might be. Working and collaborating in person, we've not had much of that, you know, it's all been really, really different. There's been a lot of challenges, and I think in terms of emotional exhaustion, I definitely feel like I've had to do more personally for my well-being. Obviously, I've been
Hmm.
pregnant for the entire pandemic, so that's part of it, but I do think
Well,
just,
yeah.
you know, nourishing food and making time to like stop for lunch, for like a longer lunch break and stuff like that, and actually like heating lovely soup up or something, all those things that I would just have probably ignored a bit before. I think just
Hmm.
sort of getting the work done, and the work was the important thing. And then after that, you know, picking him up from school, and like we would do all of that sort of lovely stuff. But yeah, I feel like I've been able to slow down a bit, just because it's such a lot to manage, isn't it?
It
Delivering
is,
a
yeah.
pandemic is a lot to manage.
Yeah, and I think being able to carve something out for yourself has real benefits. I've since I've been doing the Couch to 5K app,
Oh, well
and
done.
going for that run, but hilariously, you're meant to do 3 runs a week, and I've basically been doing 1 run a week.
That's
So
very
I think
nice, isn't it? Yeah.
it's taken me 3 times as long, but I'm at the 30-minute mark now, and I go for a run, and that's the thing that I've been kind of
Yeah,
giving myself,
yeah.
and really loving, and just having that headspace and time.
It's massive, isn't it? I've always run, and I was running, I think like a couple of weeks before I found out I was pregnant, and it was just such medicine. And then
Hmm.
just the way I felt in this pregnancy, I haven't felt like running at all, and I do really miss it, because I just feel like there is that, just a bit of clarity that comes, and then connecting, the endorphins obviously are amazing, but connecting to your environment outside. And I would quite often have flashes of inspiration when I was running, especially
Yeah.
like training for the Great North Run and those longer runs where you would get into your sort of pace, and then there would be lots of creative thoughts that would come from that. So there's definitely something about being present, isn't there, that can kind of bring more creative thoughts, I think.
Yeah, I normally, not for me, normally it's swimming, but I haven't been able to do that.
No.
And I'm not a fan of the swimming in the North Sea idea. I know loads of people have been doing it, but
They have,
uh,
yeah, yeah.
yes,
So there's been a
I've had
lot
to
of that.
sort of.
My husband was in 3 times last week. Yeah, he's a big fan of the North Sea. So, and it's
I mean,
cold,
I'm a
you
fan. I'm
know.
just too much of a wuss, like in terms
I've
of
never
the.
done it.
I have done it, and I did the Great North Swim actually, but then that
Wow.
didn't that was in a river, and it somehow feels a lot easier in a river than in the sea.
Okay, than in the sea, like pushing against the waves and everything.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's nice to see that people have sort of gone to their thing, haven't they, this year, and kind of gone, oh right, okay, I need to feel something other than this. I'm going to go and do that. So, yeah, it's been a really interesting year. So fab. Okay, well, we'll leave it there, and you'll see more of Josie as the project unfolds in our community, and I'll kind of introduce much more about what the detail is of what we're going to be doing together. But thanks so much, Josie, for taking some time out of your Friday to have a chat
My
about
pleasure.
creativity with everyone, and hopefully there's been some interesting insight in there from a professional illustrator, animator, and collage maker. She's a one-woman creative explosion, this one. She's amazing. So thanks again, and we'll see you soon.
Oh.